Welcome Capricorn to your in-depth monthly horoscope for July 2024 for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the month, and as ever we need to be mindful of your ruler, which is Saturn. Saturn continues its journey through the sign of Pisces, house 3, and has been asking you over the last 15 months to think about how you interact with people on an everyday basis, your neighbours, your siblings, your belief systems. Perhaps work harder at making your technology work for you as well as possible. But as this month begins, Saturn forges a pretty positive link to the position of Venus. And you can see that Venus is in the delightful 7th house. Venus in Cancer can be very caring. So what I get from this through the first week is that if there is someone that you're connecting to and you're connecting well mutually, this is a relationship that can get even more solid, which is absolutely delightful. But you're also blessed by a gorgeous set of influences in house 5, which can be to do with romance, playfulness, affection, warmth, sociability, and that's the Moon, Mars and Uranus. Now Uranus has been perhaps a bit more provocative in this area since March 2019, pushing you to be a bit more daring about how you manifest your ideas. But I feel that the connection between the Moon and the Sun, very good. It's a sextile at the start of this month. If we think the Moon and the Sun, the luminaries are really at the heart of everything in our lives. The Sun, the warmth that gives us the daylight, and the Moon that gives us our emotional understanding. So I feel that you can use your good sense of humour, which is often a brilliant part of Capricorns, to great effect, particularly how you relate to people, and you can relate very skillfully with the Moon and the Sun in such a happy accord. But Mars is also in the 5th house, so 5th house is a kind of Leo vibe to it. Mars in Taurus, very sensual, loves the good things in life, can be quite raunchy. The 5th house link here is to Venus, like Saturn, your ruler. So again, we get a good balance between two planets which are to do with relating. And Venus again in the 7th house can help you to let go of the things that aren't quite perfect, to celebrate the things that are working well, to have that sense of harmony and goodwill and collaboration. But Mars does bring some sex appeal to the equation. So if someone's showing up in your situation in terms of an attraction, it's looking good. But also Uranus in this area is linking to Mercury. Mercury in the 7th house gives us an ability to hear what other people say in a bit more of a detached way, not to take it so personally if they see things differently. But Uranus, of course, can be quite zany. The 5th house, a bit more risk-taking. So if there is someone you like, that combination pushes you to, go for it. And even if it doesn't quite work out as you would like, you're going to know at least you've tried rather than sitting on your hands. So to be honest, Capricorn, of all the zodiac signs that I've gone through this month, this looks really, really encouraging as you make your way into July. And the thing with the return chart is it does provide a backdrop for the totality of the month. So the Sun and the Moon and Mercury in house 7 suggest you want equilibrium. You want to reach accords with people. It doesn't have to necessarily be romantic. So just being on good terms is something that will give you some uplift. But it doesn't mean to say you can't be playful and use that lovely, delicious sense of humour, which comes through the 5th house. And it doesn't mean to say you can't take the initiative. Again, the 5th house. If you have children, the Moon in the 5th house could mean that their pursuits, interests and achievements are something that give you a great deal of enrichment this month too. But then on the 2nd, Mercury starts to change the equation somewhat, moving into the sign of Leo. Mercury in Leo is proud, it's got extra confidence to say how it feels. Mercury talk and thought. But the 8th house that essentially Mercury's moving into is much deeper. So if you have been talking to someone but you're not quite sure where they're coming from, You're going to pull up your collar on your detective's coat with Mercury moving into the 8th house, and really be a bit more scrutinizing on what you're being told. Now, remember, the 7th house doesn't have to be romantic. It could be where you're relating towards people. So that could be in a business situation. And the planets in turn, Mercury, Venus, and the Sun, moving into the 8th house as this month goes on, changes the accent from the conversation to the firm commitment or the decision to break free. And that is how the 8th house works. It's quite polarized, all in or all out. Whereas the 7th house can keep the dialogue going even if the outcome is not completely clear. And that process begins with Mercury going into 8, but it goes opposite Pluto in 2. 2-8, everyday finance, Pluto, 8th house, shared, business, investment. If you're thinking about doing something and you don't get the agreement of that person you're working with, it can definitely cause some contention. So an important conversation could take place around the start of this month as Mercury does essentially clash with Pluto. Also, Mercury opposite Pluto in a natal chart can see people being really quite opinionated and a little bit unbending, and have a tendency to try to impose their point of view on us, and not being that bothered if we don't actually agree. So just be aware, you may encounter someone who's quite dogmatic. But then on the 5th, you have that gorgeous new moon in Cancer. Gorgeous because the moon rules the sign of Cancer, and it's your sector of relating, and it's for the next month. And the Capricorn full moon you had across 21-22 June, depending on where you lived, was really shook by the influence of Pluto and the confusion of Neptune. Now you get the second full moon in your sign this month on the 21st, but it's blessed by Neptune and Uranus. So this new moon, if you work through that full moon in really being clear about what your boundaries were around relationships, gives you a chance to recharge your relationships, or really take that next step forwards towards that greater interaction or commitment. It's just that this is a new moon that does square up to the nodal axis in a T-square. And for you, the position of the North Node, but also Chiron, and if you recall that total solar eclipse, house 4, emotions. There's been a lot of emotion over the last few months that you're still working around. Perhaps it's to do with where you live, family, emotional matters that are very personally important to you. So the 7th house is where we can accept someone sees something differently, and the word accept is very important because we're not taking it personally if they see it differently. We're accepting that everyone has a right to see things differently, but also we have a right for us to see it differently. But if you're trying to relate to someone who sees things so differently, there's no common ground. It could actually be highlighted by this new moon. So I don't believe that new moons are all positive necessarily, and full moons are all negative. It depends on your natal chart, but also what's going on in your existing situation. So for you, if there's a relationship in the family or at work, the South Node 10th house position, where you don't feel heard, that's something that's going to exercise your thinking over the next couple of weeks, ready for that second Capricorn full moon. And if you still don't feel heard, it could be a time for you to check out, just being really truthful with you. But on the 12th, Venus joins up with Mercury in the sign of Leo, and Venus in the 8th house can actually be very hot. You know, if we think 8th house can be about intimacy and Venus desire, you could pull something to you, someone who really gets smitten with you in a big way. Because Pluto's opposite Venus, it can also turn up the intensity in an existing relationship. Perhaps you're going to have some kind of reignition and around the spark between you, but equally because Pluto's in the cool, detached Aquarius, maybe if what you're hearing from the other person isn't matching what you want in a practical way, and you don't feel that necessarily that they are that invested, then it could be a break point, because remember the 8th house can be about endings. But it also can be about entrepreneurship and long-term money, and Venus can be partnerships. So someone could come into your world who can be really good for you, but they might be quite a provocative influence. They might not necessarily agree with everything you feel or the way you want to go about things, and you're going to have to make a judgment call on what to do. Which brings us to the 20th, when Mars makes way from the 5th house, where it's just absolutely so charismatic, into house 6, where it's more self-sacrificing, to be honest. The next 6 weeks can see you determined to get a bit fitter, a bit leaner, be a bit more virtuous. Mars can be about a desire to be heard, but Mars in the 6th house can be that much more prepared to go the extra mile for other people, to be of service. But the sign of Gemini, the host, is about conversation. So you can have a lot of conversation in the following 6 weeks about work, fitness, health, routines, and you're going to learn a lot. But Mars links to Pluto in your 2nd house. If you really want to squeeze more out of your resources, your determination to do so can be absolutely fantastic. This combination could trigger a new job. But on the 21st, that full moon, perhaps the new job could be the connection to the new person who does hear you. But it also can be the time when you decide enough's enough if a relationship really has been bumping along the bottom. The sun then moves into Leo. Its home sign, loves being here. The 8th house, something's going to transform in your life one way or another in the following 4 weeks. It could be your relationship to your own psychological well-being. It could be the things that you feel very, very passionate about. It could be what you do with your long-term finance, insurance, pensions, savings, that kind of stuff. But the 8th house can be hot and heavy, and it goes opposite Pluto. Again, the potential for a clash over a financial matter or the lack of intimacy in an existing relationship could be quite manifest. But then on the 25th, Mercury moves into your sister Earth sign of Virgo. And the 9th house for Mercury is very much about having some freedom, some escapism, some travel, some change of scenery, some spontaneity. If something has got so hot and heavy, you may want to do something completely off the cuff as this month draws to a close. Perhaps with a friend who you flex well with, and just ring or text and let's just go off and do this, whether it's a city break or going off to the seaside for the weekend, or doing some walking, or just getting together and having some really good chats. But if it has all piled in and got very, very heavy at the core of this month, the desire to do that could be very strong. But yes, things can get heavy as this month goes on, Capricorn, but also they can manifest for you something through the tension that's actually really important, because 8th house energy does that. It can conflict us in some ways, challenges us in some ways, blocks us, tackles us, but through it we grow. So something really powerful can happen across week 2 and week 3 of this month for sure. But if you're very happy in a relationship and you want to take it from where you're really getting on well to much, much deeper commitment, the latter part of this month can be the time to do it. But if your focus is much more on your work, the chance to get yourself some kind of new job, or feel much more energized, or improve your diet, your intake of vitamins and minerals, all that shows up very strongly towards the end of this month, because some kind of transformation through Mars and Pluto in that trine occurring can occur in a very positive way for you. It's been a pleasure being with you. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please do so now. Have a great July and goodbye.